All right, Tom. So we were talking a little bit before the podcast, and we were talking about really honing in on the ICP. Tell me a little bit more about what you meant by the ICP, for honing in on that, and then also who it's not.
Yeah, no, great. And it's funny because, of course, in our line of work, we love to throw the acronyms out there, right? So
Oh,
ICP,
good point.
the ideal client profile or
Yeah,
persona, whatever you like to use. And we do throw that out there because it's pretty automatic. But to the client, it's really what we talk about is what are you amazing at, right? The
yeah,
target is to be the greatest in the world at something. So what is that thing? What is your real capability to delight a certain segment of customer? And then really dig into, what do they want? What are they really trying to accomplish in general? And you can get specific afterwards. And then usually more emotionally attractive is what pains are they suffering? What can they not seem to do? And when your capability matches up to that, now we truly have a basis for conversation. Otherwise, it's just hunting, right? And
yeah.
really frustrating and anymore super expensive because it's just inefficient. So really defining them, and we like to say, if you're really doing your job well, you should really understand your clients' pains better than they do. And I say better, but you understand it unemotionally. You are just looking for, hey, we need to fix that problem, and this is the solution we're working on. So I think once you do that, you're really making yourself more efficient, but God knows you're becoming more memorable, hopefully to the targets that you're pursuing.
Yeah. So let's start from like a very basic area. Like
Mhm.
I'm one of those people right now, and I'm saying, hey, I have a great product. It's for everyone.
Mhm.
What would be your
Right,
first,
right.
what would be your first step to break somebody from it's for everyone?
Yeah, it's hard. And that's sort of the entrepreneurial bone too, because
Oh,
when we all got started in sales, right, we were pretty probably, hopefully, jazzed about whatever the solution or offering is we were doing. And so therefore, anybody that had money must be a solid prospect. And
yep.
you learn pretty quickly that's really super inefficient. And that's really what it's all about because anymore, people really just don't have a lot of bandwidth. I mean, that's just the
Mhm.
life experience. And so, but anymore with technology, we've kind of leaned on it to help us become more efficient. Hopefully that happens, maybe not as dramatically as we would hope, but being able to position ourselves so that when I have an issue, I can quickly hopefully do research. I'm connected now with hopefully somebody that's a subject matter expert, and I'm going to start to vet them out. And at that point, I'm looking for commonality. Do you get me? Do you understand what I'm talking about? Have you done it before? Do you speak my language? Are you aligned? Are you telling me a lot of stuff about you, or are you asking me questions about understanding me more? And so that's the kind of conversation we want as humans. We want that. More of that would be better. And
Yeah.
the more that we can make that happen, the more effective we'll be as the salesperson of a product or offering. But it
Mhm.
also helps people become a better buyer because if you're in that position, you're being more efficient. And if it's not a good solution, right, you get to that point. We vetted each other out and it's not a good fit. The best thing a salesperson could ever do is say, wow, not a great fit, and
Yeah.
professionally and politely get out of there because we've done it. I've done it a million times where we sold the wrong client and it causes way more strife and lots of difficulty downstream. And you should never do it, but it happens. And that's what we want to avoid.
So when I'm thinking about picking the right person to be reaching out
Mhm.
to, because that's the ideal state to be in,
Yeah.
should I start from, thinking about firmographics, the verticals, the so on and so forth, or should I start with the pain that I think I solve best? What's my
Yeah.
starting point to really begin the journey of honing in on who I really want to talk to?
That's a great question, and that's really where I think it separates the folks that are really trying real hard from the people that become pros at what they do. And
Hmm.
I think that's exactly right because I do err on the bias of understanding that pain point. I'm going to try to learn as best I can as quickly as I can.
Yeah.
Obviously, we all have access to cool LLMs that can give us at least a quick dive into what it is, but umpteen zillion entities out there that are in LinkedIn groups, Facebook groups, whatever your jazz is, you can get in there pretty quickly and start to figure out what people are talking about that isn't working and is working. So
Hmm.
then really understanding that. And then you really just need to really kind of look at what is that vertical, what are the through lanes, and what are maybe the relationship ways, who are the best contacts, what's the best messaging, what's the sequencing, sales cycle, all of that. Once you sort of assess that, then you can put together your attack plan and say, this is going to be the best way to do it. And then, as we all say, the first time you do it, I'm enamored with my first ideas. I think they're great, right? But
Yeah.
and typically part of it works and part of it doesn't. So you just be in that constant cycle of A/B test, really being critical of your own responses, checking the data, which very few companies do that well, understanding what performance is and is not, so that you are really targeting the right client over and over again. Because
Yeah.
if you do it right on the front end and you really take care of your client, let's assume a lot there, but you're doing a great job of that, and you onboard them, and hopefully they're either a great referral partner or a repeat customer, you now have a whole cadence to learn from because you onboarded your clients the right way and you can learn a lot from them. And that becomes really high margin marketing whenever you have new offerings that then benefit. They trust you.
Yeah. Yeah,
Mm.
I've definitely gone through the process in this year alone of identifying a market that, everything, everywhere I looked, it was like this
Mm.
pain point matches what they're talking about, this pain
Mhm.
point, this point, that. And
Right.
then, reaching out and making a bunch of cold calls and having a bunch of conversations and realizing, man, everything I thought sounded right is not resonating with them. And eventually we got to the reasons why it wasn't resonating. The primary
Sure.
thing being that, we help a lot of people like their prospecting stuff and they just didn't have any true pain around it. And they also didn't
Yeah.
have the way their business structure was, nobody forcing them to do the hard thing. And so they
Yeah.
could always squeeze out of it. And I was like, oh, okay. We did all of our research, but then we didn't stay
Yeah.
stubborn and we were able to
Yeah.
go, all right, well, we thought we had an hypothesis, we tested it wrong. On to the right?
Yeah.
Do you have any tips or tricks for anyone who's, gone out there, they've listened to pain, they've connected it to what they're doing, and now they're out there testing it, their messaging, testing if it truly is a fit, how to better navigate that situation?
Yeah, kind of interesting. There was a conversation I had yesterday where it was sort of similar to what you were saying. They're pretty sure it's a healthcare product for females. It has more to do with actually practitioners and a way to do it, and it's
Mhm.
extremely compelling. They're just having a hard time getting traction with their target audience and trying to understand it. And a couple of the things that we talked about was that, part of was how they were asking for it. And it was like, this is what we all kind of learn, really putting yourself into the audience perspective as best you can is helpful. So for them, what we kind of discovered was they were reaching out going, oh my gosh, we have this new thing and we're building a company and we really love to have your information, make it great.
Yeah,
And that sounds super compelling, except when you realize these are practitioners that are super busy. We're it's an ask with not a whole lot of give back, right? And so it was just kind of crafting it, just saying, hey, we're working with your target audience. We've seen these pain points and we have learned that this is it. We think that you would add great perspective to this, and we're asking other professionals. And if you can help us out, should take 15 minutes. We'll deliver the data and the findings we have, so at least you'll see exactly what we're seeing out there. So just kind of maybe turning around and ask, right? I'm asking for the same thing, but I'm
yeah,
saying, hey, I'm actually targeting your audience because I've discovered this pain point, which I would assume that you feel the same, and with your perspective, I can give you more data about it because I'm assuming that you're kind of thinking about the same thing. So, any way I can kind of change my perspective of the ask, that can be helpful.
yeah,
Or I want to discover that I'm wrong and say, okay, good. That's good info. Now I need to know why. And if you can find a trusted partner out there and just say, hey, I'd love to come in your hat in hand. Here's my assumption out here. This has cost nothing. Here's where I was going. If you could just throw tomatoes at me and tell me every specific way that I'm absolutely blind, it would be so helpful. And it's funny if you do it in the right way with just a tinge of humor, people will go, yeah, okay, I'll try, right? And it can be very helpful. So there's no single way to skin a cat, but I always think putting yourself in their perspective, trying to figure out what they're trying to gain, and then what would it take for them to just go, oh, that guy Tom Daly, boy, we're glad that we crossed paths because he did the following for us. That's what we all want. So thinking on the front end of the sales cycle before I even meet you, how would I even set up that date? Right. So that's what I'm trying to do.
yeah. So, first step, it sounds like, is really pay attention to your messaging, see if you're
Yeah.
doing that correctly, see if you're approaching them
Yep.
correctly. Are you meeting
Yep.
them along their journey in the right place, in the right manner?
Right. Right.
But then it sounds like but also continue to push until you really have definitive proof where maybe this
Yep.
truly is in your ICP, but don't just give up because you
Right.
didn't get the right message out of the gate.
Right. And then that's kind of the good stuff. And everybody nods their heads and say, yeah, that's a great idea. And yeah, you can do it. Just be very disciplined about it. Here's the reality that has never changed in sales, that you also have to have structure, something, even if you're doing it on your very own, there's got to be a structure of accountability. So whether you're using a sequence, so you're sending an email, maybe a LinkedIn connection invite, another email, maybe a call, a text, whatever it is that you're sequencing that you found is appropriate, you need to use that repeatedly, mass customization, whatever your target's going to be, make sure it's happening. If you're going to do 10 of those a day because you want to be reasonable, you don't want to send out thousands at one time, it'll blow up your
Yeah.
domain and it won't work. So you want to make sure you have like a decent cadence that you could follow up with. If I can send 10 emails, 3 days from now I can make 10 phone calls and so on. You keep that cycle going. So that's critical. And then watch that accountability because you have to keep it rolling. That's the only way this thing works. It's really Chinese water torture. You just let it keep going because some folks in this very attention deficit, this world that we live in, you might have to touch people 5, 7 times before they react, even if they're interested. And that's just the reality. And that's the other piece where automation really can play can be your friend.
Yeah, I want to dive into automation, but before we do, for anyone that's hesitating about starting to exclude people
Mhm.
from the people they want to focus on, what
Yeah,
would be your message to be like, trust me,
yeah,
here's the reason that you want to just keep honing in. And yeah, it's actually great that you're going to ignore this swath of people, 50% of people you thought were going to be potential
yeah.
customers. It's actually worth getting rid of them.
Yeah, it's fantastic because, in the beginning when we started doing campaigns in the dark ages, I don't know how long ago that was, but we started using tools like, MailChimp and whatnot. We were just like so bummed. You get all these unsubscribes and you're like, oh, this is terrible. It must be my message, et cetera, not really thinking, 30,000 feet up going,
Yeah.
that's the best thing that can possibly happen. Somebody actually took the time to at least glance at your subject line or something and realize that they have no interest whatsoever. The best thing you can do is give them the quickest exit that they never hear from you again, at least in not in the next year or so. That would be the best thing you can possibly do because you only have a finite amount of time, a finite amount of resources, and there is a really, even if you're really niche down, if you're being honest, your total addressable market out there is gigantic. So
Yeah.
if you've got to just be really, really selfish of your own time and your own resources. Otherwise, it's hard to achieve success because anytime you open up that choke and you start hitting lots of people that are either not great fits or maybe fits,
Yeah.
it starts to become less efficient. It does not convert the way you need it to. So that's really the bottom line kind of thing, and your own time and frankly, your sanity. Because if you're dealing with way too many contacts, it becomes a nightmare pretty quickly and it's no fun. So don't do it. I mean, it's just that's not why you got into this.
Yeah, I mean, I get the feeling of wanting to not say, like, to not exclude anybody out, but you got to put yourself in the mindset of when that person says no, that's opening up more time for me for somebody who actually really truly needs us and is a yes, and I can't
Yeah.
waste my time on the no. And they're probably right too.
Yeah.
So yeah,
Yeah.
as we were
Mhm.
talking about a little bit before was, the sequences and then automation,
Mhm.
just tell me more about how that comes into play with, okay, you've started to figure out your ICP and now you need to start
Yeah.
actually hitting it. How does the sequencing, the automation you're talking about come into play there?
Yeah, it's a great point because anymore these tools that we can use now, even the other the collateral piece of it, so inexpensive and simple to do. So even if you're
Yeah.
starting up, you're a single entity, you can really pull this off, which is kind of cool. And that's the point for the tools because the tools just do that for you now. So I'll just kind of give you what works for me, and I'm specifically in the B2B space. So it's probably different for B2C types of approaches or solely e-commerce or anything like that. I'm really talking about the traditional B2B type of transaction. And typically, you find whatever your ICP is, your person that's just ideal, every aspect about them. Then we even kind of build the buyer personas, figuring out who is it we're talking about. Is my decision maker typically a founder owner? Well, I'm going right for the top, right? Is it more of maybe I'm a tech product, so I really, really got to walk through the door with an IT manager, a CIO, or something like that? Great, I determine all that. But then anymore, Once I have that ICP down, now I'm developing those value propositions again that are going to specifically speak to their pain points. And
Yeah.
really anymore, if you have a marketing department, awesome, they can just crank that stuff out for you. The three things that you typically need are one, you're going to create, if you have let's say you've identified a particular ICP for you as in a vertical, right? They are in a vertical, let's say they are home builders, right? That's your vertical. And so really the first thing you want to do is just simply spin up a landing page, right? And all that does is speak to their pain points, what good things happen if they remove those difficulties, and could be gain point two, and then a little bit about your specific expertise that makes you wonderful at what you do. So a little landing page, really simple, with a simple, usually a downloadable document, which is a lead magnet, PDF of some sort, maybe 10 questions you don't know, playbook for doing X, whatever it is, or just simply fill out a form and let's chat, right? So you got that. If you've got a CRM, usually can attach it. Gosh, you can probably spin it right up off as Canva. You don't have to be an expert at this. Really, really simple. And then the second thing is, I said, a lead magnet. So a lead magnet is a great way where you just bundle up all of those value propositions and pain points and you put it together in a pretty document. Anymore, you could do it with your LLM. You could use a Gamma. There's a zillion tools that can make your stuff super polished and easy to make, because salespeople, for the most part, don't want to become artists, just do their job.
Yeah.
And then usually I do two things. I make one that's a PDF, so that's something that could be downloadable from the web, or I could attach it to an email if I know somebody. And then I'll also say, do the same thing, but just make it in a graphic. And so I'll use that graphic for anything I need to. If I even need to mark it that way, I can embed it into an email. And even if it's a tough spam filter, most of the time it may strip out the doc, or it may strip out the image, but not the text. And so it's a way to get your value proposition out there in the pretty way, right? And so
Mhm.
those things you need. And then sequencing software, a lot of the CRMs kind of have it built in now, so you can kind of do it. If you want it all in one, there's lots of different platforms out there that you can try. Most of it is not just the how to, but it's what is that content. So then you spend a fair amount of time making sure emails are really super short. It's got the right keywords in it, but it's not something that's war and peace. Use bullets. Make scripts for your voicemails. We always recommend physical phones. We have said the phone is not dead. In fact, it's very much alive. It
Yeah.
works wonders because of its personal touch, and really anymore because we have pretty much visual voicemail. It's awesome, and it tells them that you are trying. And one of the other things is, I tell salespeople, people know what you do for a living. You are a salesperson. They expect you to be good at what you do. A real demonstration of being good at what you do, follow up. And remember, you're in great company, because 75% of salespeople never follow up. So if you're doing it, you're going to be successful, or you
Yeah.
should be anyway. So,
Yeah. So yeah, I mean, automation definitely is how you get the scale, you get the speed, you start getting what you want out of it.
right.
Uh, Automation will also, if you're pointed at a cliff, take you off that cliff even faster. Is
Touche.
there,
Very true. Yeah.
yeah, is there a good timing or like a rough estimate on what you could say is like, hey, now is the time to start considering the automation? And yes, you might not be 100% correct, but there might be a too soon. And how would you navigate that space?
Yeah, for me, it's the same ROI as anything else. So you
Yeah.
figure whatever your tool costs. So, and they're
Mhm.
all over the board. I mean, and it just depends on what your needs are. I mean, there are tools out there you can probably buy for, $40, $50 a month per seat per month or something. Some that'll cost $1,000 per seat per month. It just depends on what you need. The key to me is it really going to deliver your functionality? Number one,
Mhm.
make sure that it's really hitting there, because you don't want to, and we've all done it. Usually like, oh, well, it does like 60% of what I want. The rest, maybe it's not all that important, even though I really wanted it. And like, oh, just keep shopping, looking around, ask questions. Any more of these things can be customizable. So just, ask. You never really know. And then really be realistic about, okay, if I invest this much for my team and say, I'm just going to bite off whatever it costs, 20 grand more a month. So I'm going to bite off $240,000 a year for this. So for me to feel like it's even working, maybe reasonably, we break even in the first year, maybe make some sort of turn. But in years two and three, because we hit momentum, it's great. And if I can realistically, using really conservative numbers, that's the way I'm going to game it out. And then I'll usually say, don't buy a year up front. do try it month to month, try quarter to quarter. Just make sure it's the right decision because you're gonna change it again later. But it would be nice if you could sit on it for maybe a couple of years. I mean, technology changes fast; you can't predict it. But if you could get something you can use at least for more than 6 months, more than 12 months, that would be great. And then when you game that out with your best, kind of going, okay, if we invest this, and if I invest $240,000 or 240,000 this year, I'm feeling real confident that we're going to be able to turn, that plus another 100 grand. I'm feeling good about that. I would say that was a good decision. So yeah, I just look in terms of the ROI and then be realistic with your sales leadership. Make sure that if you're the sales leader, that you are going to commit to being learning it, understanding it, and making sure that you're going to keep people accountable because we have to be held accountable or we won't do it. And that's how you really lose your ROA really quickly. That people stop using the tool.
Yeah.
So that's a big one for sure.
So, so if I'm understanding this correctly, gather the data in like the maybe more manual process, then game it out and be okay. I feel like I'm finally at the point
Yeah.
where I've talked to enough people manually to say I'm comfortable with this being, X amount of money on return, so I can invest this amount, and
Yeah.
that'll hit me in my ROI. Okay, I like that as a measuring stick.
Yeah, I would. And
Really
then
good to
even if you're
understand
getting
it.
started, if you're like, I am just so shoestring budget, I don't have it, I'm like, hey, a spreadsheet in a pinch will work. Just don't keep it because there are $30 million companies that do run on a spreadsheet. I don't recommend it. But
Yeah,
in the beginning, if that's the tool that you've got, use it, right? And as you get a little bit more critical mass, maybe you can afford a tool that gives you more efficiency because you can afford it. But the other thing that I also say is that, some of this stuff is sort of DIY and there's a level of like, you should know how to do this. Most companies don't have that expertise. And even if they did, it's limited and it's not somebody's job. So I
Mhm.
typically say when you're going to do these things, if it's new to you and be honest, even if you think, well, I'm really good with PCs, I'm like, okay, good. But honestly, hire somebody, an expert to get you onboarded. I've never heard anybody go, oh, I'm so sorry we got onboarded, right? We spent all that money. They never say that, right? It's always a great investment. Nobody ever complains about it, and you're always glad you did. So I always recommend if you don't really know what you're doing, because the stuff is a little bit complex, I would hire an expert for sure.
I mean, I've talked to some teams where they're like, they're talking about building these things in-house, and it's like, shouldn't your team be building your product in-house? Like,
Yeah.
shouldn't they be focused elsewhere right
Yeah.
now? And, I
Yeah.
guess there's always what their affordable loss is when they're willing to say, well, we don't want to quite pay for the super, nice,
Right.
but we'll make
Right.
our janky version first. We'll prove it out. Then we'll, say, okay, now we can afford the bigger
Yeah.
one. But it always cracks me up
It
when
is.
like, now we're just gonna build the whole thing inside.
Well,
And
it's funny you say that because honestly, I think we're all entrepreneurs. We're all like that. Because
yeah.
if I'm being honest, I am that guy.
Oh yeah, me too.
I will try to monkey something around and jury rig it, and I'm like, what are you doing? Right? I mean, but it's just you almost can't help yourself. I think it's a real flaw in the thinking of entrepreneurs. You're like, I can do it. I can do that. Yeah.
Yeah.
So,
Well, I mean, that's also how you get brave enough to go do something like put yourself out there as an entrepreneur. So it's
right.
the gift and the curse, right?
It's true. So
Yeah,
right.
cool. Well, hey, Tom, we're about to get to the end of the episode. We only have the half
Yeah.
hour, booked. Before we do, I see a podcast name behind
Yeah.
you. It's
Yeah.
not zooming out for me. I don't know what Zoom's
Yeah.
doing yet, but it's
Oh
tell us more
man.
about your podcast.
Yeah, so it's daily focus and not full. I haven't taken the full plunge yet, but what I've done is a number of friends and practitioners, like Vistage chairs, and then company owners are. I mean, you learn, and you've probably seen it too. You meet businesses that they should not exist. There's just no way in the world. It's just insane. Against all odds, they
Yeah.
somehow succeeded, and I just love those stories, and I love the personal journeys because we get caught up in the numbers and the metrics and all this stuff, and at the end these businesses grew because somebody had a crazy idea and they actually went out and did it. And I find the stories just incredibly interesting.
All right, so if you need
Yeah.
your inspiration to continue
Yeah.
moving forward, to take that dive into entrepreneurship, check out the Daily Focus.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Oh, and then before we close this off, I always like to ask everyone, what's that final point, that one last thing you want to make sure that if somebody listens to this episode, this is their takeaway, and they're gonna take this home to the bank and apply it to their own work.
Yeah, you're in the business of humans, right? And my mantra is be memorable in a good way. When you touch people, if it's an email, a phone call, a smile, be memorable for the moment. If you do that, The rest will take care of itself, but just be authentic, be memorable.
Awesome. Tom, I really appreciate it. Thank you for joining.
Thank you, sir. Thanks, Austin.
Have a good one.